everyone, and thank you for joining on to the first day of the Women's Connect. This is Cxmmunity's Women's History Month panel, where we are featuring women that are blazing and trailblazing within innovation and technology. And today, for our first panel, we have the women from Riot Games. Hello.
Hi.
Awesome. So great to see all of you and super excited to be able to moderate this myself. My name is Justice Miranda. I am Director of Operations for Gaming Community Co. We are a nonprofit that is geared to helping BIPOC students get into the gaming and esports industries. And we do have an amazing partnership with Riot Games that we have been continuing on for 2 years now and looking forward to so many years to come. But I wanted to make sure that we got the women that are really leading and trailblazing at Riot Games onto this discussion to give you all a little bit of insight as to how they got here in this role, how they are pursuing their passions within the career that they currently work in, and just any quick tips that they might have for you all that plan to be in their shoes one day. So I would love to go around and just let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role at Riot, how long you've been with the company, and what do you do? What does a day in the life look like for you? So we can start with Max and then go around from there.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Mags. I have been in the gaming industry for over 20 years. So I've been doing this a really long time. I've been at Riot for 7 years. If you look me up on LinkedIn, it feels like I traveled through the forests, the mountains, the deserts. But what I fundamentally do is I've spent this entire career making games. So I worked on The Sims, I worked on Cityville, Farmville, games like that when I was at Zynga. At Riot, I actually came in on HR, probably not a conversation we can touch on today, but I'm basically a game producer. And what that means is I make sure that games get made, because people have great ideas, but you need people who can organize a team, organize schedules and things like that to get it done. My current role right now is head of production. And what that means is I'm no longer on a game team, but I know a lot about making things. So my job is really, I see it as keeping the standards of productions pretty high when it comes to either people's roles and making sure they know what their roles are, and also on game teams, what great looks like, what great game production looks like.
Awesome. So Mags, because of your experience, you're now in a role where you lead teams to be able to do some of the things that you probably were doing a few years ago.
Yeah.
Giving them key insights and letting them know, hey, this is the next project, this is the scope of work, X, Y, and Z, correct?
Yes. I would say, yeah, that answer was true a few years ago. This role that I have right now is a little harder to describe because I don't actually directly manage any of the game teams. My job, which is very challenging, is to actually influence and work with the leaders of the different game teams to establish what great looks like for production at Riot. So it's a role where I want to really maintain high standards, but I have to have connections and influence throughout the org. And we has to be, it's almost like a lot of it is based on relationships. A lot of it is based on my subject matter expertise, but also theirs, and coming together and deciding for Riot what good looks like. Because we're a pretty young company. I don't know if people know that because we have some really big games, but I think what are we, 14 years old? That's a really young company for the amount of stuff that we do. We have some really big games. We have Arcane. We run esports. I mean, these are gigantic efforts. And to think that, if I kind of use a metaphor of if it's like a 14-year-old person trying to handle really adult level situations. And I could see us all yes. Because at Riot, it feels like half the time we're like, my God, we're so amazing. And then other days are like, do we even know how to make breakfast? Do we know how to do laundry? Some days it really feels like that. So it's a really interesting situation to be in. And I'll tell you, our roles in like as a producer, like sometimes people are like, well, what do you guys actually do? And I'm like, we do whatever it takes to make the thing happen. And so at a place like Riot, where you have such enormous success, but levels of maturity and immaturity all throughout the organization, we're really big. We're thousands of people big.
Yeah.
Jobs like ours are really to kind of pull things together and make sure people are talking to each other. Sometimes there's no process at all. And that's okay. Sometimes you don't want process. Sometimes process is just too much. But sometimes you can see people really inefficiencies. And for those of you guys who are listening and you're crazy, is like you wake up and you're like, how do I make things neater, tighter? You understand what I'm saying. You understand, because we work with a lot of creative people, a lot of artists, animators, engineers, and they don't necessarily think like a producer, and we don't want them to. They're good at their own thing. What we do though is like pull all those pieces together. So we have job stability for a long time. Right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great to meet you, Max. Let's move on to Bridgette. Tell us about yourself, the role that you work in within Riot Games, and how long you've been with the company.
So I'm Bridgette Horack, and I am a diversity and inclusion program manager. So my job, particularly, I manage our ERG program, or what we call our REGs here at Riot. So it's really internal communities that have come together to support particularly underrepresented minorities within Riot, but also kind of helps the culture of Riot, as part of the culture of Riot. And so to Max's point, I also sit in a very interesting space of networking and going out to different parts to support Rioters through that program, and also to help push out what the D&I team is doing for Riot.
Awesome. Great to meet you, Bridgette. And let's move on to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Cana. I'm a manager of production on an R&D game at Riot. So basically, where we explore new game ideas and hopefully bring awesome projects to you guys in the future. I've been in games for about 5 years. Before I was here, I used to work at Wizards of the Coast on Magic the Gathering. And I also used to be a management consultant before that. And I'm also an indie board game designer on the side. So my husband and I, we like to design and publish board games.
Awesome. That is fun fact. That's awesome. Nicole, what about you?
Hey everyone, I'm Nicole Dove. I'm Director of Security Engineering here at Riot. I've been in media and entertainment for quite some time, but specifically gaming for 6 years. I did a 5-year stint prior to Riot at Take-Two, which owns 2K Play, 2K Sports, and Rockstar Games. Got to do some fun, cool work on a couple of GTA titles, which was super cool. And I've been here at Riot for 1 year, and it's interesting how similar the underlying purpose of my role aligns with so many of the ladies here, right? Because I essentially am the connective tissue between the games business and information security, right? I don't expect my game team developers to be security experts. I don't expect my information security team to be game production experts, but when we're going and growing into a space where we're entering into new territories and we're not just a one game company anymore, and we're growing rapidly and we're building processes for scale, we have to think about how we inject security into that in a way that aligns with the speed and the scale that we have to grow at. So I'm actually building a whole new function for Riot, which is amazingly challenging, but very rewarding. And I'm having a good time.
That is awesome. And I think all of your respective roles would lend greatly to our first question. So as we know, gaming is a very demanding career, very fast-paced timelines, making sure that shifting the deadlines, that we meet those necessary marks for any timelines or the shifting that is needed. So how do you personally balance your work and your personal life, knowing that gaming is such a demanding career or a career field?
I don't know if balance is ever achieved. What I will say, interestingly enough, there's a lot of prioritization that has to happen like every single day. And sometimes I'm splitting my days in half and prioritizing like what I want to accomplish, right? Both at that micro scale and at the macro scale, whether it be building out my roadmap for the year or just doing a quarter look back and a quarter look forward. And that always changes because, as you mentioned, our industry is so dynamic. On the flip side, I'm also just listening to myself, like looking at how I show up, watching how my body reacts, thinking about how I feel. Because when I'm better to myself, I can be better to everybody else. And in a role that's so service-based, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, agreed. Take care of self first to be able to take care of those around you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nicole. It's definitely a situation of understanding the ebb and flow and your limitations to that. Like you can only do so much and care so much. Like, and for me, I'm in a role where I deal with riders on a very personal level, and I'm in the middle of like all of it. Sometimes it feels like, and so I have to know my limitations and being able to say, oh, I need to take a step back and like prioritize what I can do, understand what I need to delegate or what gets put on pause or what's not as big a priority. Because like, I think that's the biggest thing that I've experienced being in gaming is that the priorities change. And as long as you're aware of that, you can kind of go with it, but you have to be aware of the priorities and your limitations and kind of merge the two and make sense of it for yourself.
So I think when I think about balance, I don't think I have good balance, but I think actually that's actually okay. And when I was much younger, when I was starting out in the gaming industry, I just gave everything to work. I didn't actually felt like I needed a personal life. And when you're, okay, so this is me. When I was younger, I made a lot of friends at work, and these are lifelong friendships that I've made. And I don't think that's exclusive to the gaming industry, although I think in the gaming industry, especially 20 years ago, the gaming industry was fairly much smaller than it is now. It's almost like if you met somebody who was in gaming, you're like, oh, I see you, you see me, we understand each other. We can talk about our nerdiness about games over in the safety of this group. And I didn't feel like I was at work all the time. And actually, it wasn't probably good because I don't know if you guys know, but way back, there was actually a lawsuit around kind of demands that you could have on people. And it was in the gaming industry. And I have been at work, I've slept on a sleeping bag. I have spent nights there waiting for a build. So when you make a game, it's coded, and then you're waiting for the game to actually run through Office so you can play the newest version. And when you're getting towards the end of it, you're like, okay, I need to play the latest build because we're always waiting to see if it got fixed. But it was also a time where I had a lot of personal relationships. So we would play games together. We played poker while we're waiting for a build. So in that way, back then, that balance was okay for me. Now, I'm a mom. Like I have a 10-year-old. I also have, I'm a mom, and I have a mom who's elderly. So I'm actually what's called the sandwich generation or whatever it's called, where I have obligations to both somebody younger and somebody older. And I find that I really not only want to have that with them, and that I don't want to be doing work all the time. Right. And it forces you through your career to build skills you didn't have before, which is time management skills, prioritization skills, in the way that I didn't need that earlier in my career. I still don't think I have amazing balance. I do feel like when I'm with my kid, or I have to make a decision to be with my kid, I feel like I just lost a couple of days at work, and then vice versa. I think, but I refuse to plan my life based on this thing called guilt. It'll be there with me, and I'm just going to have to be okay that I feel it sometimes, but I'm not going to make decisions because I feel guilty because of it. You got to be called to a higher purpose, which is when I'm at work, I'm in service of the player, of my teammates, and of the people who work on my team. And at home, the same thing. And I really try to be mindful that that's what is meaningful, and let the guilt just be there sometimes.
Yeah, for me, I would say that it's definitely hard to achieve work-life balance, especially if you have a lot of ambition, and especially if you're a woman of color, because most of my career, especially the beginning, I was always stressed out because it's mostly white men, right? And it was very hard to get my spot in management consulting and then to get my spot in the games industry. And for me, I've always felt like, oh, I have to prove that I'm here because I'm good. I have to prove that I'm here because I'm the best. And then in addition to that, I have a personality where I just want to be the best anyway. And so that leads me to like put in a lot more work and effort than maybe some other people would. Yeah. And more recently, over the past couple of years, if I'm ever like reaching a point where I think like, wait, this is unsustainable, I try to reevaluate my priorities. I go back to, I set like annual goals, and I have like a word for what the year is supposed to be about and like what I want to prioritize. And I essentially, I like audit my backlog of all the things that I'm doing and how I'm spending my time to figure out, hey, am I spending my time the way that I said I wanted to spend my time? And really, in order to achieve balance, it's all about saying no. And it feels bad, or at least for me, it felt bad a lot of times to say no, right? It's like somebody wants to have a one-on-one chat with you, but like, what if a lot of people ask you? Sometimes you have to say no. Or what if there are all of these things that you have to do at work? But like for me, I got a knee surgery at the beginning of this year, and it was like hard to walk. So I'm like, oh shoot, I could just like burn myself to the ground, but then I wouldn't be able to take care of my knee. So for me, like the way that I've been able to achieve balancing like my work life and my personal life is I essentially say, hey, I'm working during these hours mostly, and when I'm there, I'm going to give it my all. Yeah. And I'm going to focus on what work can I do where this is like the most important work, and if I put my time into this, this is going to deliver the most value. And anything else that is like lower in priority, I like negotiate that. Like, does this need to be done right now? Does this need to be done at all? And if it's, if it's not going to have that ROI for my business or for the business I'm doing at work or for my life, maybe I just say no, right? And then in addition to that, in my personal life, I like to do a lot of relaxing things. So I'll get massages, I'll get my nails done, because work can be stressful. And like anytime I'm like, oh no, I feel like a wrinkle coming, I need to go relax, or else game over for me. So
yeah. I think all of us have the exact same sentiments. I can connect with each one of your responses. So ultimately, because you're giving me keys to the trade as well. First and foremost, we need to prioritize. Second of all, it is okay to say no. And third, don't hold on to the guilt for saying no or not being able to do things that you felt you should have been able to do. It's okay. We're human beings. No matter, yes, we are super women. Yes, we're superstars. Yes, we're probably leaders within our own communities and our families, but that also comes with another burden of commitment and things that we have to then just take into account for our own work-life balance. Will there ever be work-life balance? We're not saying that that's the ultimate goal. We're just saying that we need our life to balance with our work. How about that? There just has to be a certain point where we are okay with that. And I think that you made a really great point. I think everybody, has kind of hit on it of where, hey, when I first started in my career, I might not be in the same place that I am today. And I think that that also makes a big change. And that goes to my next question. How did you all get into Riot Games? And, like kind of what was that the first position that you landed, and how did you? And the main reason I want to ask this, especially within this community, is the fact that we can, I think, all relate to the fact that we are, minorities as far as women and women of color, to say there are a lot of boundaries of just getting into the industry, let alone with Riot Games. So what are some maybe even tips after you let us know, how you got into the industry and how you landed your first job at Riot Games? What would be like a quick tip that you would give to anybody to say, hey, if I was myself a year ago when I got this job, Nicole, or 7 to 5 years ago, this is what I would have told myself, just so I could prepare myself for either the resume process, the interview process, or even actually getting the job. So to sum up the question, as I said, How did you get or land your first role at Riot Games? And then maybe a quick tip or fact that you would like to give to anybody else if they were standing in your shoes where you were when you first started.
I can start. So, well, I don't know if it's that interesting to talk about Riot. I actually was recruited into Riot. And so I'm going to tell you how you get recruited into Riot.
Okay.
I think the first thing is you got to be doing something that you love. Or you have to naturally feel like this is who I am. I fell into game production. My very first game that I worked on was The Sims. And I would say that my pixie dust, the magic I have, is one of organization. Like I look at things, I'm like, okay, this should not be done this way. We need to organize. Whatever your thing is, there's gonna be a need in the company. So the one thing you have to do is try not to be somebody else and do the thing that you're really passionate about. And people ask me all the time, am I a gamer? No, I am not a gamer. And they're like, well, why are you I don't know how it happened, but I'm telling you, I'm not a gamer, and yet I'm working in a game company, and I wouldn't change it any other way, because my skill, I could go to a bank, but why would I work for a bank when I can work in the video game industry? Come on, let's be real. But I'll tell you the second, so that's the first, because that will get you a really long way when you're thinking about like even life balance. There are times when I'm working in a spreadsheet after dinner because I just really want to. So then it doesn't really feel like that bad to me, because I'm like, I really want to understand this thing. So you got to have that going for you, because making games is hard and trying to get in a game company is hard. So you've got to have that going for you. The second thing is, I was really lucky when I was on The Sims that I was pretty good at what I did, because again, I'm like passionate about it. So I can't even help myself. I'm doing it. I'm a little like Victoria, where I'm like, I want to be the best. I don't want to be in the middle. I just really want to be really good. So that pushes you. And then I made really good relationships with people. Just because I feel like I'm a good person. I do really good work. And if you take that into the long run, it really pays dividends. I would say the person that I got into my second company because I knew somebody at that company who respected me, who knew my work and said, no, we need somebody like her. And then that's what happened at Riot. So I would say, really love what you do, be really good at it. And then the connections are really, really important, especially because we are people of color and we are women. If you were like, not that, I would say the relationship part is even easier. We actually have to work at it. That's gotta be a thing we work on.
100%. And I will relate to you in that same regard, Mags. I say I am Bejeweled, Candy Crush, Zen Match. That's as far into gaming that I can go, but I am spectacular at Director of Operations. That is my pixie dust. I'm going to steal that now. That's my pixie dust. But agree, you do not have to be a gamer, quote unquote, to be a part of gaming companies or in the gaming industry. Whatever it is that you are passionate about, there's a space for you in the gaming industry, whether you're in legal, medical, all of those things are still needed. So 100% agree. Kudos. Who wants to go next?
I can relate to Max. I too was recruited for Riot. And we want somebody with a corporate background that's comfortable in a non-corporate space. And I was like, all right, cool. Because I was tired of corporate. So having the experience of structure, because to Max's point, Riot is a teenager. We're a company in puberty. If you ever met anybody in puberty, you know, they're kind of all over the place. So having somebody with a background that's based in structure helps level. And so when I got hired, I was on a tech ops team, on tech operations. And so I was in a non-technical role, was literally there as a support person. And then just through building relationships, because that is key to this industry, any industry, but again, for women of color, you have to make those connections. I ended up now I'm on the D&I team. Like I've just been taken along to different places, and now I'm on the D&I team. And I'm still in a place of where I build relationships and I connect people within the company and connect people with the community, Riot to the community. So it's very much a thing of your strength can take you anywhere if you can identify it. If you can identify your strength, you can come to Riot. You can go to any gaming company. You can be in this industry, but you have to know your strength and you have to be able to sell that strength and show it, not just say it, but you have to show it, and there's a place for you.
Awesome. Let your work show for itself. Victoria, Nicole?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly enough, the cybersecurity industry is so teeny tiny. I swear, it's like everybody knows everybody. Interestingly enough, my path into Riot was quirky because I actually met the person who recruited me into Riot. We both were volunteering for a similar cause. So he and I were both volunteering for an organization that had a mentoring program for young people of color looking to get into tech. And just by being on that type of project together, we naturally were introduced and crossed paths because I had gaming in my background and he was here at Riot. And there wasn't an initial conversation about, do you want to come work at Riot? We actually built an organic relationship for probably over a year before we even started talking about interviewing or opportunities. This was somebody who I would call for advice, for career advice, somebody who I would just call and just catch up with. So I love the idea of how important relationships are, but organic relationships are just like so clutch. The tip that I would give is give before you ask, right? Like so many times we're seeking things and asking for things of people, but look at this amazing opportunity, this job, this dream of a job that I found while actually volunteering and being of service to someone else, right? And so timing, giving, and building organic relationships, significantly key.
Awesome.
For me, so like I mentioned, I started out in management consulting initially. And what got me interested in the gaming industry was actually hearing about how it was not a great place for women. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I was like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. It's bad there. What if I go be a part of the change, like let's go jump in the fire and let's like put this fire out and make it a better place. So I put together this master plan. The master plan was step 1, in order to prove that I can be a game dev, I should learn how to make a game. And so that started with making and self-publishing my own board game with my husband. And so doing that taught me a lot about like, how do you design a game? How do you get an artist for a game? How do you make a game good? How do you play test a game? Just like so many things that I didn't know before. And my goal was like, I need to be legit, right? Like I need to be credible. So that way I don't just show up and not know anything about what I'm doing. And doing that allowed me to get my job at Wizards of the Coast as a game producer over there. But the challenge that I had was at Wizards of the Coast, I was mostly doing a combination of tabletop game production and then also external development. So I wasn't working with a lot of like the engineers or the devs in-house other than the game designers. And so that was a little bit of a different experience than what I wanted, because I really ultimately wanted to work at a video game studio where we would do in-house development and I could be a producer working with like the team making the game itself. And initially, like the first role I applied for at Riot, I made it all the way to the end and I really thought that I would get it. But then I actually got rejected at the end and I was very sad about it. Yeah. And I was actually like crying on the floor. I was like, oh, it's 2020. This is awful. Like all of my dreams, they're never going to come true. And then it occurred to me, I was like, wait a minute. What if I approach the way that I apply to game dev jobs the way that I make a game? And there's a saying in game development that you want to fail faster. The idea behind this is that like when you play test your game, you want to figure out like what's going wrong as quickly as possible. And then I like identify how can I fix this to make it better. So after that failed interview, I asked the recruiter, could you tell me what the feedback was? Because it seemed like it was going well this entire time. So where did I fall short? And I took a list. I was like, okay, they think I'm more of a facilitator than a leader. I don't have specific experience in Agile. I need more experience working with engineers. They want me to know more about like product management and stuff like that. And so I took that list and I literally like translated it over. All right, Scrum certified. I'm going to learn how to make a game in Unity, crossing out every single item. And then when I applied for a new role, it was actually for Legends of Runeterra on Mags's team. It was great. I got the role, and I didn't just get that role. I ended up getting like 4 other job offers. And so that was really exciting because I didn't just say, oh, I applied and I failed. Let's go ship the same package to the next people or the next company.
Yeah.
I would say my tip is if you're encountering failure, learn from the failure so that way you can make changes and apply it to the next place that you apply.
That's awesome. I love that advice. That is so perfect. And even the fact that you went back to that recruiter and it wasn't like, oh, I didn't get the job and that was it. No, I'm going back and I'm asking you for feedback so I can just better equip myself for what it is that I know that this is my dream role. How do I get to that position? So essentially like doing a work back process of, hey, I'll get there if I do these certain things. That's awesome. My mom always says that can't is not in a woman's vocabulary. That is like a phrase that she grew me up on. So I believe that exactly what you just did was saying, it's not that I can't do this. What do I need to do to be able to do this and to be able to get this position? So that's awesome. Actually, my next question is directed to you, Victoria, and Mag. So for some of us, that don't know as far as game production, game development, what that looks like for the end product, can you give us what the difference is between game production and game development? And then how do your roles fill in within those spaces?
Mags, you're the expert.
I saw this question and I'm really interested in why this came up. To me, it's vernacular. To me, they're actually much the same thing. The difference may be we use the term game development generically to mean all the work that goes into making a game. So if you say, hey, and that goes from like theoretically, as you start the game with a bunch of people in a room deciding what the game is. You have designers, you have producers, you have a bunch of people. And then you bring that idea and you're like, okay, we think we know we want to make, and you go into something called pre-production. And that's a period that covers like, hey, let's build some piece of it and let's try it out. Let's prototype it. You prototype it. It seems pretty fun. Let's go a little further. Let's build some of the game out a little bit so we can actually see if we want to invest in this game. And once we do, we go into a phase called production, and then production ends with launch. That entire thing is called game production, right? And so sometimes you say, are you a game developer? Well, an animator on that team would say, yes, I'm a game developer and I'm an animator. So whereas game production is more specific, some people vernacularly can call that whole process game production too. But when we use the term game production in the term of like, what is the role of game production? That is what Victoria does and what I've done for a really long time, which is we are usually the leaders in a team that makes sure the game is actually made. And there's many types of game producers. There's some game producers that are actually lean very deep on the features and the content itself and making decisions about that. But then on the other end, we have producers that are actually more executional, where they take care of like schedules, unblocking, blocking blockers, and just make sure they're organizing the team. But that entire group of like, basically, what does it take to make a game? And you've got all kinds of people that are from different disciplines. Like I've mentioned, engineering, sound, writing, designers, and the game producer comes in and kind of just ties it all together and make sure that we're all going in the same direction. There's a lot of things that we have to do, a lot of tools, a lot of leading collaboration, making sure communication is clear. That's what I consider the work of game production.
Awesome. And so even for both of you, what is like your favorite part about the role that you currently have with Riot?
I would say that like one of my superpowers is that I'm a really strong leader. Like I'm really good at getting a bunch of people together who might be like, what on earth is going on? Bringing them together and being like, all right, this is what we are doing. Let's go, team. Like, let's work together and work towards a common goal. And so one of my favorite parts about my role as a game producer is that I get to tap into that strength and I get to talk with and work with a lot of people. And I think it's actually really beautiful because, you can only do so much as an individual. And so what I like seeing is, hey, we have all of these different people. Let's have them come together. What can we make when we're together? And then getting to see it, like looking at the game, sometimes I get emotional. I'm like, wow, this is so nice. It looked like it was chaos earlier, but it's here. We're making a game. So that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah, I would say my answer is pretty much exactly that. And the kind of work that I do now is not on a game, and it's honestly, I'm going through a big learning period. I'm actually listening to Victoria. By the way, this is why we're all going to be working for Victoria one day, just for the record. But I look at it like making a game is really different than what I'm doing now. And so I have had to learn a bunch of new skills and kind of analyze what worked and what didn't work. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is align a bunch of leaders towards creating a standard or some decisions that we can just say to the entire organization of like producers at Riot and say, hey, I know it's been kind of confusing, but this is the direction that we're going. And I think I'm in the middle of it right now, but I know from my past, there's a pattern and a cycle that goes with making things. And it's like, there's going to be a period. And I know it happened in games. In every single game I've been through, there's a period of darkness where you're like, nothing is going to come together. No one is listening to me. No one cares. People are so tired. I feel like there's like this darkness, but if you just keep with it, if that's the point, you don't quit. That is where producers make their money. This is what you push through. And on the other end, it's something, it happens and it clicks. And you can look back when it's done and go, oh, we did it. Like we did that. Well, you're going through it. It doesn't feel as smooth. But in the end, you look back and you realize like there are always ups and downs. And it's like what they say in life, like it's never about the destination. It's always about the journey. And I know the closest relationships that I've built professionally are people who I've gone to war with to try to get something done, something like so ambitious, something that's never been done before. And then you go through it together and you're kind of bonded through life, sometimes in a personal way, certainly in a professional way, where you look at other people and you're like, no, I can trust you because we've been through this before. That's my favorite.
I love that. That is so awesome. That's so awesome. So I'm actually going to throw this kind of the same thing to you, Bridgette. Give us like a little bit of background about what the RIG program is, maybe some of the events that you have done so far to date, knowing that this is essentially something that is new within Riot Games. And what's your favorite part so far?
Oh my goodness, it's so much. I've actually been doing this job now for a year. So the RIG program at Riot is our Rioter inclusion groups. And so most other companies are called ERGs, employee representation groups or whatnot. And at Riot, we have a special crew. We have 7 rigs total. And so we have a Filipino rig, which is actually the first one of its kind, just for the Filipino American community here. API, Noir, which is our Black community, Red Genders, which is actually the Riot Alliance of diverse genders. So it's a representation of all gender identity, and Rainbow, and then Unidos, which is our Latino community here at Riot, and veterans. And so I get to work with all of them. And so I really do enjoy it because these are employee-led communities here at Riot, but they help feed the culture of Riot. And they also help Riot become a more inclusive gaming company itself, because they actually get opportunities to provide input on our product. So some of our champions have had direct impact, our rigs have had direct impact on champions that were created, like Cassante and Cana, Gecko, which was just released in Valorant. You need, if you check out the video, our Unido's logo is in the video. It is now part of Valorant lore. So we have all these different opportunities to influence not just our culture inside of Riot, but the game to be more representative of the people that work here and our players. And we've been able to do a lot in the past year. We actually, my favorite thing, which finally came true 2 years of thinking about it, was the event we did with Cxmmunity, the kickback in October. And that actually came out of a conversation. Our engagement with it came out of a conversation at a Riot Noir lunch during COVID. And there was a desire to see HBCUs get into esports. And so somebody was like, Ron Turner, writer, he works in esports. He's like, I'm going to go talk to my leaders about it. And he did. And they gave him a budget. And then they brought in other people within the esports. And through our partnership with Cxmmunity, we were able to do the kickback, where we were able to bring Riot Noir members to Atlanta to speak to students there. And it was like I said, that was a 2-year dream of Noir. Even myself, because I was part of that original conversation. So that was like a great opportunity. And it was great to see being able to talk to students. And we've been able to build out engagement with students. We've been to USC recently. We've been volunteering at Solar Impact. And so we're really able to connect to communities to help the next generation see that there's a place in gaming. Because even when I came to gaming, I'm from St. Louis. I grew up in the hood. I did not know this existed. I played video games. My first video game was an Atari. I remember, and you never thought about, you just played the game as a kid. You didn't think about the company behind it.
Right.
And so never knowing that, never thinking about it, it's just not something that you think is an option. And even when I came to Riot and I learned about it, my immediate thought was, oh, the kids who grow up in my neighborhood don't know this exists. And so if they don't know, this won't change. And so that kind of has driven my outreach since I've been here at Riot, is that there needs to be more women. There needs to be more people of color. But a lot of them, for this next generation, if they don't know the doorway, the path to get on it, they can't get here. So the rig, that's one of the things that the rigs take very seriously, is recruiting and our community work, so that we can create, the pathways for our next generation, so that, 10 years from now, gaming looks like the world, basically.
I love that. And yes, huge shout out to the kickback, and coming again soon, 2023, and very excited for that. But same question. So Nicole, what does it look like for you to be on the security team? What is your role? And also what is your favorite part about being a part of Riot and doing your role at Riot?
My favorite part about being Director of Security Engineering is actually getting to build this program from the ground up. I've worked in this type of program at my past 2 companies. So seeing it done really well at a significantly large multinational company, and then seeing it kind of get started from the ground up at a mid-sized media company, I've been able to pick and choose what are some good things from this side and what are some maybe not so good things that I want to watch out for, and pull all of that together and build it right, specifically for Riot the first time, right? So I really like discovering new capabilities, discovering new needs that the business has, thinking about our players and every single thing that we do, and finding the balance between having robust security with a pleasant and sometimes even invisible user experience, which is a really interesting kind of balance to play. One of the things that I like about my job that's not in my job description is I am the most senior Black woman on my team, the only Black woman on my team. And I think it says a lot to be able to kind of build that and support that, right? Because it's a way to bring representation not only to people in my community, but to people in other communities who may not necessarily cross paths with someone like me or from where I'm from on a day-to-day basis. So there's just a lot of learning. I love that there is so much collaboration, and working in security is fun because you get to think like a criminal, right? Like it's this challenge of staying ahead of the hackers because they are evolving every day and they have one job: break into your stuff. And we have many jobs, including keeping them out. So it's just a fun challenge, but it's great to do that among people that I just enjoy being around, right? Like, I mean, it's not uncommon for anyone who works in cyber to get a call on the weekend or in the evening, right? And you've got to jump in and get all hands on. You want to do that with people that you like and enjoy being around and respect. So a combination of all those things really make this experience really, really positive for me.
I love that. No, that's awesome. I've never thought about it in that way, of the fact that you essentially have to be the first criminal before you can defeat the criminals that might be invading in your space. Love it. Here for it. So I think that that's actually a perfect segue. So right now, like, this conversation, first and foremost, is about understanding what your roles are within Riot and giving people kind of an overall perspective of the fact that you do not have to be a game developer or game designer to be able to work within a gaming company. But there are so many different roles within a gaming company that we would like to expose people to. That is something I'm going to just do a shameless plug. And the reason why we have this partnership with Riot, we actually have ongoing workforce development workshops that are virtual, that we can just deeper dive into, you know, what are the different roles at Riot that some students right now are currently interested in, but never knew that that could be done at a gaming company. So please tune in for those coming in September. But this is the first of very many, knowing that this one is specific for Women's History Month. And the reason why I wanted to make one that is specific for Women's History Month is because a lot of times we as women are not getting that same knowledge for what it is that we do and how we have to overcome hurdles and boundaries that a lot of people don't have to come over or have those same hurdles. So I wanted to make sure that we do dive into that just a little bit. So like, in your experience working at Riot Games, and especially a woman at Riot Games, what other challenges come along with your role or just with the company in general? That could be mental, that could be physical, that you've personally had to overcome, and how did you overcome that? And I know that that's such a loaded question, right? We can all probably name numerous things that it's like, hey, I have to overcome getting out of my bed every day. But if there is one specifically that it's like, yeah, this is what it was, especially knowing that a lot of us might not have started in a gaming sector and came into a gaming profession. It's high demand, everything is fast paced. What are some things that us as women might, you know, be like, hey, let's talk about this first before you even think about getting into this type of industry, or even my role in general?
I think from my point of view, it's making sure your voice is heard. I feel like I see that for women in this industry, that's the biggest challenge for them. It's still a very male-dominated industry, so the behaviors are still there. They're learning, it's progressive. But you have to be confident enough to say, I need you to hear me, or strategic enough to have an ally that will support you and make that way for you. And that sounds really terrible to say on one level, because you're like, oh, I should be able to stand on my own. But it's the way of the world. Two things can be true. You can be smart and capable and all of that and still need people around you to support you. And also that helps you not carry the burden, but you're by yourself. But I would say it's like, trust that you belong here. If you get here, you belong here. There's no imposter syndrome. It's just a scary thing. But you got here, you belong here, and don't let anybody tell you differently.
I love that. Whoever is in the chat right now, if you wanted to clip that, you can go ahead, go back, clip it real quick, and we'll save it, because yeah, major keys.
It was actually very shocking for me going into games because where I grew up in Las Vegas. It's pretty diverse there. I think the majority of people at my school were people of color. And I also went to NYU, very diverse there. And my first job, we had a lot of women and there was a lot of diversity. So when I went into games, like my very first job, it was such a shock. Like I sat in the office in like this place called the Pit, and it was just like me and a bunch of men who were game designers. And I was there and I was like, here I am with my makeup and my manicure and I'm showing up. And I was like, oh shoot, like, do I need to change? Do I need to like wear a t-shirt and a hoodie for people to take me seriously? Do I need to talk in like a deeper voice? Is there another person of color here? Can we eat lunch together? You know, like, so initially it was very stressful because I noticed that in a lot of gaming spaces, many people were not used to working with women. And I was like, what? Like, there's so many women in the world. How can you not know how to work with a woman? And it would lead to multiple situations where much like what Bridgette said, I would have a hard time like either things that I would say, it would be hard for other people to receive it. And other times it would be hard for me to say because I felt like such pressure. Oh, of course, Victoria, yes, the woman of color, the one, she's gonna say something about that topic. And I didn't want to feel like I was different. I didn't want to feel like I was the other. And so honestly speaking, when I first started in games, it was a lot of like, okay, I'm here at work, and then like secretly cry at my house with my other friends who were women or people of color, and we would just like get each other through it, and we would tell each other, we can't give up. We have to make a change. And even though it's hard for us, if we can do a little bit of something, that's going to make it easier for other people who come after us. And so that's really what kept me going. It was thinking, okay, this is hard now, but every step that I take and every other step that every other person like me takes will bring us closer to it being a safe and inclusive place for people of marginalized backgrounds to be in the gaming industry. And so I'm really excited because when I first started in games, I was always aware of my identity. I was always like, oh my God, I'm like the one person or like one of two people who doesn't fit in. And I had so much stress thinking about that and trying to advance causes to have more diversity, equity, inclusion at the companies that I worked for. But one of the things I love about Riot is that I personally don't have to worry about it anymore because one, I've really enjoyed working here, and two, people like Bridgette are doing such a great job. And so now I'm like, great, I could just do my job and I can exist and I don't have to worry as much. It's not perfect, but it's much better. And it's really like the community that has kept me going and has kept me strong.
Yeah.
So I went to, so I grew up here in Los Angeles, and I grew up in a city called Alhambra, and it is majority, it became majority Asian. And then I went to UCLA, which is like practically Asian. And so I actually went through a lot of my period in life not feeling that I was different. There was a lot of people who looked like me all around me. I think the first time I might have, well, no, I'll say I never thought about my race or my gender. I had this naive belief that my work would actually be all that was needed.
Yes.
And so imagine my shock. So I'm kind of like the opposite of the stories some of you guys are telling, where I actually didn't think it was a problem. And I was so arrogant to believe that my work would show through, that none of this stuff would matter, until I remember, maybe it was, and I can't remember which speech, but Oprah was accepting an award, and she talked entirely, I think, about women and how we've had to work so hard. And I'm just like, okay, if Oprah is bringing this up, this is really an issue. And then obviously now being at a more senior level, and you look around and you're like, who looks like me or any of us here at the VP level and above? And the numbers just start to just drop, and you can't ignore data like that. So it's only been more recent that I've been such an advocate, or just do like in a place where I'll do what I can to help. Because before I'd be like, well, where do I spend my time? Where do I spend my effort aside from work? And I'm finding a lot more people are coming and asking me, will you talk? And like, if anybody wants to invite me to a school, I'm like, can we please get more women into programs so they know that this is a reality? Some of the work that Bridgette was talking about. I will tell you right now, very frankly, I am tired. I am tired of pushing this boulder up. And I was just quickly looking up yesterday, Michelle Yeoh won the Oscar and Ki Hui won an Oscar. And I literally posted on my Facebook and I said, I'm overwhelmed. And I said, well, now I can't give up. And it's about, Victoria kind of touched on this, and I agree with what she's saying, is like, sometimes, especially when you've been in gaming for as long as I have, and I've gone through like, it doesn't matter, to like, oh, it really matters. Like there is friction, and we can't just ignore and say like, it's not happening. It's happening. The reason why we're even talking to each other today and taking the time is because we're all kind of trying to figure it out together. And we're going to have losses and we're going to have gains. Michelle Yeoh winning is a gain, maybe not directly for the game industry or any corporate industry, but everybody has to keep going a little bit. And sometimes you're tired and you got to rest and maybe give the baton to somebody else, and then see if you have the energy again and try to do some things that you think will help. But it's like a number of, I think, micro efforts that's going to lead to change, and it's going to be really slow. And then maybe it'll snap and it'll be a big change, and then it'll be slow again. But I feel like we're working in the right direction. And there's a lot of stuff, and I don't know, Jess, if you want to get into it, but Riot has had its share of massive struggles in the press, in the courts. And I think about, why am I still at Riot? Because I think I can do more inside than to try to go find a company that is all evolved, because that's going to be really difficult to find. So what can I do inside the company? And the more that they see leaders of color and of different gender affiliations start to make it into leadership levels, it will be less unusual. And then people will look up and go, hey, there is a Mags or a Nicole and a Bridgette and Victoria and a Justice in those roles. They just need to see it. Yeah. It's like the 4-minute mile. Everybody knows the story of the 4-minute mile. Before the 4-minute mile was run, nobody thought it was possible. The minute somebody ran it, multiple people run 4-minute miles, even in that year and in the years after. So we got to just figure out how to get across that threshold and just keep going. And I'm telling you, I'm tired.
We have a saying within the Black community, we tired.
So tired.
We tired. Into that. Nicole, did you have any comments?
Yeah, so it's interesting how all of our experience have some similarities and then some vast differences. So much like Max, I grew up in a city, Newark, New Jersey, that was predominantly Black. And I went to a high school, the nation's first performing arts high school, a magnet school, predominantly Black, right? Mostly diverse. I went to Clark Atlanta University, the nation's first Black university, where, interestingly enough, they very much did prepare us to say, if you're going to work in the corporate world, here are some of the challenges that you should expect. So I was always prepped for it. But then when I started my career, I started on Wall Street, I did some consulting at a Big 4 firm. With all the prep, I was still not prepared. right? Working in male-dominated industries, there weren't inclusion groups back when I started. So diversity, equity, inclusion there was no business case, right? It was not a priority. It wasn't the right thing to do. So it was a very different world. Now, even though I've been working for 20 years, and I've worked in gaming before, the interesting thing, and I don't think this is a Riot challenge, I think this is a personal challenge that many Black women face, is every new environment that I walk into, I have to recalibrate, right? I have to understand my boundaries, right? I'm constantly being hyper vigilant and evaluating responses and culture and where do I fit? What can I say? Especially being the first, right? It's like, how far do I go? And if I go all the way, will it be negative on me, right? Like, what perspective does it give people? What will people think, right? So there's just always this, even after 20 years of a career, that I still have to do every time I walk into a new company, right? Is just trying to get a lay of the landscape and figuring out how much of myself can I really show up. And sometimes it works out well because environments, you need to do that. And then there are other times where people are so welcoming. And I'm the only one thinking about those things where it may be the opposite. So it's just always trying to figure out that balance. And it's exhausting. I just want to come to work and make great stuff. And like, you know what I mean? That's all I want to do. Right. But
and this is talking about, like, at Riot, whenever you, like, for the most part, we are, I would say on average, more woke than in other companies, where there's a lot of allies here. But, you know, we could dream, like, I wish we didn't need allies. I wish it would just work the way it does. But we're lucky we have a lot of allies. So I guess we have a great problem where we have a bunch of people who are ready to do the right thing, but then we have to together just even figure out what the right thing to do is. Right. So I want to say, at least look on the positive side, that we have partners, we have people who want to help, but the work is still there.
I would even say Riot is one of the first places that I didn't feel the need to, as much that feeling that Nicole was talking about, of gauging the room and deciding how to show up. I think also personally, you know, once you reach over 40, once you hit 40, your cares lessen. So my desire or ability to code switch kind of started to die around 40, you know. But like, my interview at Riot was the first interview I wore my afro out to an interview. Before then, I would always straighten my hair. My afro was much bigger than this at the time, but I wore my natural hair on my interview and I did not care. And it didn't come up in conversation.
Yeah.
And this was the first company that happened in.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that's the benefit of gaming, is that there's not as much question about, oh, well, you're not showing up right. You're not fitting the mold. Like, I can wear jeans every day if I want to. You know, I can wear elastic pants and nobody's gonna look at me funny. But I can also, I get more looks if I dress up at work. And it's like, oh my God, you're dressing up today. But it's that level of, you're here, like, there is a touch of, oh, I get to just come to work and do my job. But there's still that, it's still the growth that's still needed. But that is, I would say, is one benefit I know I personally have had being in gaming, is that I don't have that same feeling of the same level of burden that, oh, I have to look a certain way and I have to present a certain way just to be in a room. Still got to play the game, but it's not as heavy as it is in some other industries.
Yeah, I love that. I actually am, we have been receiving our questions for Q&A. So I'm going to quickly, because I think that this ties in really well with one of the questions that was asked to us. And I think that that kind of leads into what I want to kind of ensure that our conversation stays around, which is, you know, women in the gaming industry, women at Riot, but also the struggle that we currently faced or the current hurdles or anything that comes back to us, that it's just like, oh my gosh. Another thing on top of the fact that I have to do my job. Yes, I am a woman in this space. Yes, I am a woman of color. Okay, how do I mitigate my way through this? So I will ask first and foremost, and hey, we can answer them as needed, but for Riot specifically, what are some things that Riot does to make you as a woman feel more included and inclusive? And even if the question isn't specifically about Riot, what are some things that maybe, like, because we have a couple people that are listening in right now that are like, right now I, might be CEO of a nonprofit, or I might be running a firm. How can I make my women feel more included in the space that we're in currently as well? So if some people want to answer more on the Riot side as how, Riot has made you feel more included as a woman, and then maybe some people answer on the, hey, maybe these things aren't done yet, but these are things that I hope can be done in the near future, or that this is just across the board that is done no matter what. Like everybody always says a couple of places that it's like, oh, these are key places to work at because they give you work-life balance, or they make sure that they have the accommodations. I'll personally say when I visited, and making sure of even being able to work with people at Riot, I'm like, I feel so included, and there are so many different things and it's just on basic conversation of the fact that I think, to all of your points, there are some things or conversations where it's like, hey, there's a point that I am making that you probably need to be aware of that you're not thinking about because you're not a woman, nor are you a person of color. Okay, awesome. Now, understanding, like I said, working with Riot, I'm like, maybe not as much, because even when I'm in those conversations, I'm like, no, these are my people. To your point, I can wear things like this and feel like, yep, this is my day outfit with my Converse, and be perfectly fine with it. But there are some people that are still in a corporate setting or in a setting that might be a little bit more micromanaged than where we are, that they're like, well, what should I do for my women to make them feel more included?
Can I just shout out Bridgette and the DE&I team? The fact that there is a Bridgette, right, is something that Riot is doing to make sure that we feel included, right? I think back to just last month, our Black History Month celebration, and how we incorporated so many things that were cultural norms for our community into the space at Riot, whether it's the music we're playing on campus, the food that's represented in our NOMS cafeteria, right? Like bringing voices together from across the industry to talk about our experience in our industry, like that's unheard of. And we do that not only at the race level, but also the gender level, right? Like Bridgette and her team definitely make sure that the normal things that happen at Riot, the voices of women and women of color are heard in those spaces. So it's creating new things, but it's also like playing this really strategic, masterful melody of like, hey, we already have these things going on. Let's pull you and your voice and your experience into those things. And I think that's super powerful. And on the unintentional side, like Bridgette, when I interviewed at Riot, I had purple hair, right? Now it's platinum. Nobody has said a thing. That is the first time ever. Nobody has said a thing. The fact that I can just wear sweats and sneakers and still be taken seriously. And I think those are some of the things from an industry perspective that are just the norms. So being able to perpetuate the norms, but find ways and make space in the things that are happening for us to be represented, I think is super powerful.
Yeah.
I think there's so many answers to this question. I'm trying to come up with things so people, like if there are people who are listening and they don't have such a liberal environment like Riot does, I think some of the things that Nicole just mentioned, the smallest things matter. When it is Black History Month, when it is API month, right now it's Women's Month, to even note that is a thing. And it is really fun because we do have a cafeteria, which we call NOMS. They will theme the food to the thing. So even think something small like that, I think gives the message that people at the senior level care and know that this thing is happening. Okay, so that's a small thing. I'll tell you, for me personally, if folks, if they care about this topic, do some research about what it's like to be a woman of color sitting in a room with a bunch of non-women that of non-color. I was in a room, and I am more often than not the only woman in a room of game developers. Maybe there's another person, another senior woman. I remember being in a room of senior leaders at Riot, and I said something. Another person repeated exactly what I said. And you hear this happen all the time. So I'm like, hey, what about this? The person said, hey, what about this? Another man in the room said, you just said what Mag said. You just repeated what Mag said.
Nice.
I thanked him afterwards because I was in shock that this happened to me. So educate your men, your white men, that this happens. Yeah. Educate them that sometimes a woman sitting in a room does not feel safe to speak up. And so make space. Ask them after the meeting, hey, did you have anything to add? I noticed that you were particularly quiet. You know, and you go through years of being like, I was just actually at a social event yesterday. Another woman who I met her socially, but she was talking a little bit about her job. She works in civil engineering, and she was like, oh my God, the like being a woman in that industry, like she's just kind of given up. You know, she's just like, what's the point of trying? I just know all these things happen to us as women. She's a female, an Asian female. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. We're lucky enough to be in the gaming industry where it is a little bit more liberal. And for anybody listening, if you want to move it in that direction, these are the little things that you can do to educate people who want to be allies, to help us kind of be able to blossom and be truly who we are as women of color.
I agree with all of that. And thank you, Nicole, for the great compliment. I would say definitely make rules or guidelines around inclusion. Make sure that women's voices are being heard in the room. I've had an experience where in the meeting, they didn't wait till after the meeting. I was kind of quiet the whole meeting. And a senior manager, a leader in the room was like, oh, we haven't heard from Bridgette. Does she have anything to say?
Yep.
Yeah.
Doing that is a sign I can speak here. I have a voice here. My opinion matters. Being a good ally, and even other women being a good ally, because sometimes women fall into a bad habit of there can only be one, because that's what society has taught us. And it's like, no, there's enough for all of us to eat.
Yeah.
So let's support other women too. And then more than that, for those who are not necessarily, for white men who might not be comfortable around women, or especially women of color, learn to be curious and learn about the people around you. They too are human. They too, you will find, like here at Riot, we're a gaming company. We would play. A lot of people here are gamers. There's some of us that's not, but yet there's a way we connect. And so be curious about the people around you on your team, so that even though you don't have like this immediate connection that you might have with another white man or another man, to say, oh, I get him and he gets me and we cool. You might have that same thing in common with a woman or a woman of color and can still have that same connection. But you never know if you make an assumption that you don't. And that's what a lot of people do. We move in life under assumption without ever really just taking a moment to ask and be curious about those around us. So if we do that, then that's an opportunity for us to not only be a better, ally, a better teammate, but also be a better human, because then we also recognize the humanity in those around us.
Agreed, 100%. So I'm going to ask one of the questions that came in, which I think is an amazing question because I faced this myself. So thank you for submitting your questions into our form. But she asked, as a woman, it feels like I have to always be perfect in my work. but that leads me to being afraid to make mistakes and missing opportunities to grow. How do you overcome that? Great question.
I'll take this one because last year I was very stressed out about this.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned previously, like when you're a woman or you're a woman of color in a workspace, or at least for me, I felt this added pressure of, shoot, I really need to perform, because if I fail, it's going to reflect not only poorly on me, it's going to reflect poorly on all of the communities that I represent. And like that's a huge burden. And on top of that, I felt like it like I would see lots of men and they would make so many mistakes and it'd be fine. They could golden parachute away. And I would always think like, oh, the dream, like, wouldn't it be great if I could make a mistake, even like straight up fall on my face, like this is a huge mistake, and still be able to succeed or like go upward. Like, what a dream. And I like, unfortunately, I haven't really seen that be possible for many women I know. I feel like it's been stressful because if you're a person of a marginalized background, sometimes it's like if you mess up, there's not as much leniency for you. And last year I had to, like, I was basically trying to never fail. I was trying to make sure, okay, everything is good. But it was leading to a point where I would potentially burn out. And so what I ended up having to do was have conversations with my manager, with my team, to get an understanding of, hey, is this like a safe place? I know that we say that we can fail, but you need to tell me the truth. Can I actually fail? Or if I fail, are you going to come back and get mad at me and hold it against me? And I heard from them, they said, no, it's okay, Victoria. It's okay to learn and grow. And I had trust issues. I was like, are you sure? I'm like writing this down because if I make a mistake or something, if I have a failure and you go back on this, like I want to have a written document that said that it was okay. And so after that, I was really able to give myself permission to make mistakes, to not be perfect. And there was actually one person at Riot, her name's Elizabeth Brownson, she's an ops director. She gave me this like really great analogy, which is a lot of times it can feel like you're juggling a lot of balls, and it can become so overwhelming. You're like, oh shoot, if I just keep taking on more balls, like this whole thing is going to drop. Like, what do I do? And what she told me was, it's not about juggling all of the balls. It's about figuring out which ones are glass and which ones are rubber. Because the ones that are rubber, you can drop them down and they're going to bounce and they'll be fine. But the ones that are glass, if you drop them, they're going to break, and that's a big deal. And so when she told me that, it helped me realize, wait, I can put these down. I can drop some of these rubber balls as long as I have conversations with my team and other people to let them know, hey, this thing, like, this isn't high priority. I'm going to drop this, because the trade-off is if we keep doing this, I'm going to burn out. And that's not good, because if I'm not here, who's going to do all this work? Like, what kind of culture are we going to have? Right. And so that's really what I've done in my experience.
Awesome. No, and I think that question really goes back to kind of how we started this conversation, right? Like, and I love that, how we said, first and foremost, a good majority of us, we're big on the organization aspects. We're big on the project management. We're usually the people that are in the background making stuff happen. But the way that we can achieve, first and foremost, like mental stability, let alone work-life balance, is to prioritize, also not to feel guilty, but also just do the best that you can do. And it's going to be okay to drop a ball here or there, or not be able to do a task in that exact moment. But don't hold on to it to make yourself feel like, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. Because you're not. You have made it this far, and all of us have made it this far just based off of our own work and our own due diligence to make sure that certain things were being met, and that we were breaking glass ceilings for a lot of people to not have to go through the same things that we're going through today. So big kudos to everybody that's already on this panel, but those that are listening in that are making waves within whatever profession you're in, because that's needed. And it's okay for us to drop a ball here or there. But don't hold that guilt onto yourself. Literally, Mag's like, that is now going to be my thing this year. I am not going to. So listen, community, if there's some things that I was feeling guilty about before, now it's gone, because now I'm like, okay, there are things that need to be prioritized, but there are things that sometimes we just can't say we can do everything in the world. Yes, we are superwomen, but that does not mean that we're invincible. So 100%. So I would like to ask this question, knowing that, especially the background that you all have given us, of, hey, we might not have started in the gaming industry. Gaming might not have always been our passion. What advice would you give women that are looking to get into the gaming industry, especially those that do not already have a background in the gaming industry, like i.e. myself? But also we got a question that was saying, you know, a lot of gaming companies or those that are in the gaming industry or esports industry, they look for like 3+ years of experience within the gaming industry or the esports field. So how do you overcome that? But also just in general, how would you suggest for women to get into the gaming industry?
So when I started at Riot 7 years ago, it was required that you knew how to play League of Legends, which is actually one of the biggest achievements of my life, that I did learn and played League of Legends. That is not a requirement now. If you go through Riot's listings and job board, you will see that there's some that require game experience, some that do not. So I would say, don't make assumptions that you need a background in gaming. And also don't, if you love games, I highly encourage you to get into games, because it's like, if you love candy, you should go work and make some candy. I mean, like it really is so much more fun to experience it, do your work in an industry that you love. And I think in some jobs that does matter, in some jobs it does not. So I would just say, don't be discouraged just because you have no game experience. There are lots of positions available. Your other question was, well, what if the job does require it and you don't have it? I'm not going to say apply anyways, because I think that would be like dreaming, because I know we go through a lot of resumes, but this is where it really matters about what you share in your cover letter and extracurricular activities. So like things, if you don't have experience in esports, like working in esports, but you run a club, or you're part of a team, or you lead a gaming club, or you arrange anything that you do that's related, you should list, and you should write a cover letter. You should write a cover letter. And I think that helps. I know I've spoken to folks who are trying to get into design, and I'm like, the best way you can get a design gig, if you haven't been on the design team, is you yourself have sat down and designed a game out of pure passion. Even if it's a board game and you sit down and you one day, you're like, I'm going to sit and think about this. Or if you have played games and it makes you think about, hey, I think a lot about this. I've written it down. I actually wrote the company and said, hey, why don't you like adjust this number, that number? I think anything that shows why you want to get in the industry, it does not hurt. And somebody might take a chance on you.
I would also say there's some basic things of understanding what you want to do and how you fit in before you apply, because you could be really super excited. And I'll use my own child as an example. He loves games. He's like, I want to work in games. Even before I worked at Riot, he's like, I want to work in games. And now it's like, okay, what do you want to do? I don't know. Like he knows Java, he knows Python, but he's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. And it's kind of the learn what a day in the life is, because you might love, this is what he does now. He knows he doesn't want to be an engineer because he does not like coding that much. But he's also an artist. So, but he's like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough to be a full-fledged, character designer. But then there's a position called technical artist, which I didn't even know existed till last year, that, hey, that might be a good medium for him. That kind of falls in between. And that might be a good role for him. And so I will tell any young person, especially because I go speak to school groups. I've done that for a few years for Riot. And I always encourage them to go to our YouTube channel and watch a series of videos. So you want to build a game. And it has like 10 different positions, lists, of videos of people who did that job here at Riot and talk about what their day in and day out is and, what they actually do. Because parents and teachers love to say, oh, you should be a software engineer. And they have no clue what that entails. And so the kid just knows, I know a job title and I want to go do a thing. So let me go figure this out. And then they can find out, I suck at math and I don't want a computer science degree. But they could be a really creative person and not realize that there is a whole artistic side to gaming. And you can be a creative in this field and not a techie, or that there's non-tech roles like that some of us are in that requires no skill at all. I can't write a lick of code and I sketch at best, but I'm here. So find out what because there's all types of roles here. We have accountants here. We have lawyers here. We have payroll people. You don't have to be in those certain roles, but to be in the gaming industry is definitely a different place and it's a cool place to be. So that's also an option.
I want to give a quick tip about if you're going to submit your resume. Know that every open position we have is a need. We're desperately trying to hire the right person. Please make it easy for the recruiter as they're vetting through thousands and thousands of pieces of virtual paper. I want you to look at the job description, and then I want you to make it really easy for that recruiter to map what you do against the job description. So I have done in the past, I have actually written my resume differently depending on how the job description is written. And then in the cover letter, say, hey, you're looking for these things. This is what I'm an expert in. Don't mention the thing that you don't do. If you think you only cover 80% of the requirements, apply. Because one thing women do is they think they have to be an expert in everything in the requirements. You do not. You do not. There are men that have applied for my job who are 2 levels below me. I was trying a backfill. Elizabeth Brownson actually backfilled me. I had somebody who's 2 levels below me apply for a job that was like at my level and above. I'm like, what are you doing? That's the kind of stuff some white males will do. Sorry if there's a white man listening. I don't mean you. I mean like that person.
I'm sure that there have been numerous white males that have came in and listened to this. But at the end of the day, I think that this is just good quick tips, good tips for anyone to be able to have. Victoria, I saw you come off mute. No, you can.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say related to what Mag said. There is that stat that, men will typically apply for a job if they feel like they're, 30% qualified, and women need to feel like 70% or something like that. And something that I started to do, like after I graduated from college, is I would just apply for things where I'm like, this is out of my league. This is scary, but I'm going to apply and see how far I can go. And, that's how I got my job at Wizards of the Coast. Like at first it didn't make sense. It was like, wait, you're like a management consultant and you're making a game on the side. Why are you applying for manager of all the game designers and R&D for Magic the Gathering? But I wrote like a really compelling cover letter explaining to them, like, this is why my experiences are helpful for you. I'm going to bring a unique perspective and I can do this job. And even though I didn't get that specific job, they really liked me. And then I became a game producer for them. And then similarly, when I applied for a job at Riot, like, did I meet all of the requirements on paper? Not necessarily, but I thought to myself, I'm going to write these down and I'm going to figure out how to do all of these things. And so I would say that, just because you don't know the things right now doesn't mean that you can't learn. So much like what Mag said, look at the job description, what is needed. If you don't know how to do all of the things on there, can you learn how to do those things to fill in the gap? And yeah, like as women, believe in yourself, because like something that really bothers me about our industry and just like all industries in general are that I oftentimes see so many competent, brilliant women in such low-level positions because they are not advocating for themselves. Yeah. They could be higher level, but they're not standing their ground and, saying like, I would like to move up. And I know that it's a lot more complicated than that. It's very difficult to get promoted, especially if you're from a marginalized background. But start thinking about that. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to try to move upward. So that's what I'll say.
Awesome. No, that was great. And I think everything that you all have given to us it's not just, women specific. There are a lot of things that are just in general. Hey, just believe in yourself. There are things that you probably are doubting yourself on. There are things and skill sets that another person might have that you don't have, but it's okay. You still are an amazing person. You still have amazing qualities. You probably are a kick butt, professional in whatever regard you are a professional in. So just believe in yourself and have that confidence in yourself to say, I can do this. And even if I cannot do this today, I will set up a way and a space for me to be able to do it in the future. So we are coming on time. So what I will ask is, before we end our first ever panel for Women's History Month through Cxmmunity, which is called the Women's Connect with the Women at Riot, I just would like to ask, what is one quick thing, one beam of light that you might give to women in general? Let's not even say those that are in the gaming industry or want to be in the gaming industry. We're not even talking about people that want to be in your careers. What is something, quick tip, a sprinkle of your fairy dust that you have, quote Meg, that you would give to anyone?
I would say, don't give up, because winners never quit and quitters never win.
I think fear is not helpful. If you're scared of something, you should really do it anyways. And I know you're gonna easy for you to say, no, it's not easy for me to say. I walk around life scared about a lot of things. I'll tell you, my daughter last weekend played in a championship basketball game. I think I told this story. Nicole already heard it because she was in another panel with me. I'm repeating myself, right? Because I'm old, so I can't remember. They were down 14-7 against a team that had beaten them already.
Wow.
And they slowly climbed up to 14-14. When I got a break, I said to my daughter, Brooklyn, keep fighting and keep your energy low, like keep it down, because they were getting super hyped. Mm-hmm. And they tied the game, and then they won in sudden death.
Wow.
So I'm telling you, if our kids are scared too, and I can't imagine like the resilience they had to have not to give up in the middle. So if you're going through something hard right now, or if you're failing, you may think that's the end. That is not the end. That is the middle to test whether you're willing enough to go on so you can win. And the lesson is always in the journey about your ability to overcome fear so that you can keep going. It will teach you the lesson of your life.
I love that.
I would say, listen to your gut. Because a lot of times girls are taught to doubt what they're thinking, and they grow up into women who don't trust themselves and their decision making. And the fear that Max talked about is the output of that. They fear making the wrong decision. They fear failing. And we don't see men feel the same way. Like Victoria brought out, the ability, the audacity of a mediocre man is like next level. And like to be able to move in the world like that would be like, I want to see what that feels like, just to be confident and wrong at the same time. But that's okay. Like, just learn to listen to yourself. Like, pay attention to what your inner voice is telling you, and trust that a little bit, a little bit more, to take the risk, to accept the challenge and put yourself out there. Because if you limit yourself out of fear, you'll end up regretting it. Because you never know what's possible unless you just go and see and try.
And I'd say lift as you climb. And what that means is, we're all climbing up this mountain. It's a very hard journey. And there are lots of other people climbing up with us. And so like as you move upward, help other people around you. And some of those people, they're going to be a part of your community. And you all being in it together, supporting each other, that's how you're going to make it to your goals. Because it's so much harder alone. And when you work with other people, it's so much easier and it's so much more fulfilling to see one day, right? Like, wait a minute, we were all at the bottom, but look, now all of us are here and we are thriving and we are making a difference.
I love that.
Oh, Justice, you're on mute.
On mute, right. I'm like, they're doing work behind me. So I'm like, geez, is this the time that you should be doing this? Anywho, but I was saying all of it, agreed in everything that you all just said. And I appreciate everyone just sprinkling a little bit of your fairy dust on us, because this is awesome. This is the first one of the week that we have coming up this week. And I just want to say this is to have this conversation, not only with women, but with women of color at Riot Games. It's kind of like on top of amazing on top of amazing. So I appreciate you all for, like I said, breaking that glass ceiling and saying there's so much more that can be done within the gaming and esports industries. And I will be that person to make sure that at least I can say I've done everything in my power to get people that look like me, that act like me, X, Y, and Z, involved into this space. So big round of applause and kudos to you all for making sure that you are, like I said, just trailblazing and being those ceiling breakers that a lot of us really just need, just to be able to say that the next person will not have to deal with the things that I am currently dealing with. That is a big GG, super big. So I want to say thank you all so much for being a part of our first ever Women's History Month panel and the first day. We are super excited, as I said prior in this call or in this stream, that we do have these panel series continuing with Riot Games specifically, starting again in September. And also, as Bridgette had mentioned earlier, we also have our annual kickback that will be here in Atlanta this year as well. So we have more to come with Cxmmunity and Riot Games partnership. That's why I had to make sure the first people that we talked to were our people at Riot Games, because you all have continuously supported Cxmmunity's efforts in ensuring that BIPOC communities and BIPOC students are at least acknowledged, and that we are a part of this gaming and esports industry, knowing that there are billions of dollars that we have yet to touch, not even to mention women that are in that same field. So thank you once again. And I would love to just say, anytime that you would like to spread your fairy dust on us, we are willing to receive it. And please continue to do so in your own platform. So thank you once again, and super excited to see you on the next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.